Our guest today is Ram Shriram. He's one of the founding board members of Google, now Alphabet. He also worked at Amazon with Jeff Bezos, and now he's the founder and CEO of Sherpa Ventures, where he really invests his time, his attention, his resources in helping other companies build and scale to great impact in the world. Ram, thank you for being on our podcast today.
Great to be on your show.
So as I said to you, I was watching a video about how Jeff Bezos met Sergey Brin and Larry Page from Google, and they're like, Ram did. I'm like, whoa, this guy seems really cool. I've never heard of this man. I looked at some of your videos. You just came off as a very genuine person with a lot of success. So I thought perhaps you can come on this show to really share with us your story about where you came from and how you ended up being part of not just one, but two of the most successful companies in the world that are literally changing the world.
Well, I think a lot of success comes from a prepared mind, but there's also a bit of luck involved in success. So I was born in Chennai, India, raised by a single mother who was a college professor. My father died very young, and my mother never remarried. And so we lived with my grandparents, and so those were my early formative years. And then I came to the U.S. For graduate school primarily, and then ended up working in a young company in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and then ultimately moved to California, the West Coast, Silicon Valley in 1983, and I've been here ever since. So how I ended up on the internet is really sort of by happenstance. This is the luck part of success. So I was working in the networking industry, and then one day I saw that there was this new browser by this company called Mosaic Communications, later to become Netscape, which was the seminal company of the internet. And so I sent an email to the founder, Jim Clark, saying, hey, I'm working in a company in a related field. I would love to talk to you guys and see if there's an opportunity. He responded, and I went and interviewed, and the next thing I got the job. And then 3 weeks later, he said, let's go figure out how we can grow this very quickly, because we're going to be under attack by Microsoft if we don't grow it quickly. So it was baptism by fire. So I had to grow the business with the product that they had as quickly as possible. And that was, in 4 years of compressed time, internet time, you learn so much in building a business. And even though I had worked for 15 years prior in various companies, those 4 years were probably the most important 4 years of my career.
And what do you think it was? Because like I said, it's almost like dog years. So during those 4 years, what are some lessons you learned, or one lesson you learned then that literally carries with you now and with the companies you work with as well?
Well, one of the lessons is that on the internet, you're instantly global. So you don't have the time to scale your company. You're global from day one. So you better have the best product as quickly as possible. There is no time for you to scale. Scaling happens rather quickly, and failure happens rather quickly. So in a way, it's good because it's not a long, painful death, but it's a very quick death. If people don't like the dog food, they don't eat it. And you're in the dustbin of history. But on the other hand, if you succeed very quickly. At that point, you have to figure out how do you continue to A players hire other A players, Bs hire Cs, Cs hire Ds, because there's this natural life progression of insecurity based on your skill level. The less competent you are, the more insecure you are. And you realize that as you're building a team and organization. So the longest period of time that you can continue to accumulate the smartest, brightest, most capable people around you, you will continue to foster scale and success. And so most good CEOs, most good leaders spend well over 50% of their time hiring, because people is what makes the business.
Yeah. And let's talk about people. Someone like a Jeff Bezos, everyone knows him now, but you worked with him early on in his career. What's one lesson or example that you feel he shared with you that has allowed you to be successful as well?
Well, I think I've learned a lot of things from Jeff over the years, but the one thing I did learn very early on was his obsession with the customer. So he didn't worry that the company, when I joined very early, when I sold Jungle to Jeff in 1998, shortly after Amazon had gone public. It was a very small company with a market cap less than $5 billion at the time. Compare that to 1.5 trillion or whatever it is today. The focus was on customer obsession. He didn't want a single customer be unhappy because we had so few customers. We were paying a lot for them to come through the front door of Amazon. Amazon wasn't generating organic traffic in those early days. So that customer obsession is something I learned from him. In other words, it's not that you ignore your competitors, you keep an eye on them, but you don't obsess over your competitors, you obsess over your customers.
Yeah. And you've also worked with literally the founders of Sergey and Larry of Google. I was fortunate enough to speak at Google headquarters, and it's just so inspiring to be at the Googleplex, talk to the people that are there. What do you feel is something that you learned from the founders of Google, like Larry and Sergey?
Well, the point I made about hiring earlier in this conversation, they continue to interview every hire well past 1,000 employees in the company. So can you imagine half your day is spent in interviews for different obscure roles, what then later in a bigger companies you think is an obscure role, like a product manager for a specific product. Well, it's not so obscure when you consider that all of these spokes are connected to a wheel, and that wheel is turning, and the faster it turns, the better the whole engine works. The company moves more smoothly. And so they were obsessed with hiring the highest quality people. They came up with sort of a test. They had multiple rounds of interviews. If they're an engineer, you did many coding tests to make sure that you were good at what you were claiming you were good with, and so on. So that process led to really a very high IQ, high quality team in the early days that continues to help that company scale today.
And is it true that Larry and Sergey met Eric Schmidt at a Burning Man, and that's how they chose him as the CEO of Google at the time?
No, not accurate. I think Eric came through the connections of the board, and he was well known to many of us because of the connections in Silicon Valley to Sun Microsystems, where he worked. And later, when we recruited him to Google, he was actually the CEO of Novell, that's based in Utah, but he was commuting from the Bay Area. So that's how the connection was made.
Got it. The last question I have for you, Ram, is that your company is called Sherpa Ventures. I always love the meaning behind a name. Those who might not know, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. Tenzing is a Sherpa. They're an ethnic group in the Himalayas. They are literally these mountain climbers. And when I saw that, not everyone might know that, but the Sherpas are the people that help the people climb up the mountain, which is the highest mountain in the world. So perhaps you can share with us what's the story behind your name of your company.
Well, two quick answers. One, yes, the intended name was Sherpa in Palo Alto. So Sherpa in Palo Alto is too long a domain name. So Sherpalo took care of that. The second was the first rule of starting a business is you don't pay for your domain name. So if you can come up with a new word that doesn't exist in the English language and then turn it into a domain, because your success is defined by you, not by the domain name you pick. So Sherpalo was nobody had a copyright on it. Nobody owned it. So it was free. And so it was a new name that I created.
That's awesome. Ram, thank you so much for being on our show today. We really appreciate you. Hope you have a great day.